You're listening to The Dating Den with dating and relationship badass and best-selling author Marni Batista. Every week, you'll get the raw truth from top experts and real people on the important dating, sex, and relationship issues you want to know about. So if you're ready for true talk that's authentic and unfiltered, and you're not afraid to be called out on your stuff, then you're ready for what's next.
The Dating Den with Michael Golowyn. The high-quality questions to ask yourself to get over a breakup. Ladies, welcome into the Dating Den. You know I have a thing for men with accents, and I know that you do too. So I have brought one in to the den to help you with your breakups. Welcome, Australian-born and raised. Yes, ladies, he's a failed relationship and breakup coach. His name is Michael Golowyn. And he is going to talk from the heart and from his experience. He was plagued for 20 years, just like a lot of us, with failed relationships. And he had these endless cycles of abandonment and rejection. And you know what? All of that was to help him uncover eventually some really unique solutions to rapidly transform grief and heartbreak into living an inspired life. And all of the solutions that he has are backed by, I love science. So he's got the science to back it up and also some pretty deep ancient wisdom. And he has been part of an ongoing study and training regimen for the last 12 years with world-renowned human behavior specialist, Dr. John DiMartini. So I'm excited to hear about that. In 2016, when his long-term partner left, they spent years building that life and home together. I'm sure you can relate. He was devastated like we all are, and he had a glimpse of what could be possible. And he wrote a book called Transforming Your Life, Volume 2, which is a bestseller, which is amazing. And now he's helping people do the same. I'm so happy that you are here to kind of blend science and wisdom and spirit and experience so that we can help our listeners transcend breakup grief.
Yeah, no, for sure. And thanks a lot for having me. I mean, it's an honor to be on your program.
Well, look, I think one thing I really want to ask you about is, because I think that, most of the people who listen to our show are women, honestly. And I think that they feel like men don't go through breakups, like they don't have pain, or that because you guys are like emotionless, vapid, buckets of testosterone, that you don't have grief. So like for you, can you just kind of explain that moment, what it was like for you and how it kind of led to your process that you created?
Yeah, well, it wasn't a process I created. I actually adapted John DiMartini's grief process, which he created for overcoming grief from loss of a loved one through death. And so after repeated patterns, like you said, of heartbreak, rejection, abandonment, time and time again, I was find myself in one more situation, but this time I had some knowledge behind me, and so I pulled myself up off the floor and went, look, Michael, you've been here before, and this time is different. You have an opportunity to actually work on yourself on a breakup, which you haven't actually done. And so over the next few weeks, I actually had to go overseas and work, but I found time to chip away at this process and start work on my loss and my ex. Let's call her Jackie.
Okay, Jackie.
And yeah, and by the time I finished, I was in a state of absolute grace for not only her leaving and giving me space to have all these wonderful new people in my life and opportunities that have come up, but also a true love for her as a spiritual counterpart on a different sort of plane, as like a soulmate who's fulfilled her purpose on my journey on this planet. It's a bit maybe cliche, but it's actually how it feels when you have an open heart. And not only that, what happened within an hour is that I met my next partner, And if I had to write down everything that I wanted in a partner up to that point, my ideal girlfriend, my ideal intimate partner, Karen, who actually just came into my life, embodied all those things. And it blew me away. Right at that moment, I did not want a partner. I was happily single. I finally released the emotions and the tensions and the grief and the pain. And I had my life. I had my freedom back. And here I met this amazing lady who, and all this serendipitous synchronicities just popped up. And I went, whoa, okay, I can't ignore these. So, yeah, I reviewed my process and went, okay, what did I just do? And now I apply it to other people who are suffering from the same thing. So the process that I use, it works with heartbreak, but also it helps singles manifest their ideal partner.
Ooh, people are like, tell me, Michael. Okay, let me ask you one quick question. So, because it's funny, I just wrote a post on LinkedIn this morning because I have 3 daughters, and in 10 days, I'm going to be a real empty nester for the first time in like 24 years.
All right.
I know, right? And I was feeling that grace for that last bad boyfriend, right? I always say it's like the worst, best thing, right, that ever happens to you. That one who just brings you to your knees and you're like, shit, maybe it's me. Like maybe there's something to learn here from all of this. And if I didn't have that dude, right? If I didn't have that dude, I wouldn't be the mom that I ended up being to those 3 amazing girls. I feel like, I needed to go through that so I'd be a better mom to them. I wouldn't have been able to create the impact that I create through this vehicle, the show, and the work that we do. Yep. Right? And exactly what you said, Michael, is so profound. I really want people to hear this. And like, when you're in it, what gets you, what is that thing? Is it pity? Is it you just aren't conscious? Like, why, when people are in breakups, typically, are they not able to get past the pain and the why did this happen to me and all of those things that you did the first and I did the first, however many times we were broken up with? What's that thing right now that people are like, I don't see it. I think you guys are full of shit. This sucks.
Well, because we're not operating from the same part of the brain. We're actually operating from more primitive brain centers. When we're highly emotional, we're actually operating from the amygdala, the nucleus accumbens. And what we're going through when we're going through a breakup, this might come as a surprise to most people, but it's actually withdrawals from an addiction. An addiction is an addiction to the qualities of our ex-partner that we're infatuated with. And when we lose that, it's a grieving process. We're actually withdrawing from those things that when we're around that person, those aspects actually light up the areas of the brain, the same areas of the brain that cocaine users get lit up when they have administered cocaine. This was proven in a study back in 2010. I read it in the Journal of Neurophysiology. And when people who are suffering from romantic breakup, they actually were shown photos of their ex-partner, the same parts of the brain lit up, and as the craving centers from cocaine addictions or people who are suffering from addiction to cocaine. So that's what's going on, and it blinds us. We're not operating from our prefrontal cortex or our executive center. We're not rational. We're not objective. We're highly subjective. We're biased. We're polarized, and
it'll fuck you up. It'll fuck you up.
And it stops us from being able to see things in a clear light.
Yeah.
Because our subconscious, when we got emotions, our subconscious has half the data. We're not seeing half the information. We're not seeing the full picture. We're only seeing part of it in our conscious mind. And when we bring that other part out of our subconscious, out in the conscious light of day, that's when we gain full awareness. And it's only possible when you actually really stop, force yourself, and ask these very specific quality questions. And no one has the wherewithal to be able to do that in those extreme moments.
Yeah. I used to think like this was my before way of how I was going to get over a breakup. I don't think I've ever shared this before. I have this insane. So my amygdala told me that
Yeah.
if I sat there and I cried for like, maybe a day and a half, and I just was surrounded by
Yeah.
tissues, and I had buckets of tissues. So I was like, I'm going to put all these tissues. This is gross, but I did it. I'm going to put all these tissues in like a drawer. I'm going to clean out a drawer. And I'm going to put all these gross ass tissues in this drawer. And then when I feel like I want a hit of, I called it man crack, right? When I was like, oh, but maybe it wasn't that bad. I thought if I opened up the drawer and I remember what a dick he was, then suddenly I would be over it. But guess what? That did not work, right? Because I was still like what you were talking about. Like the neurons were still firing. Like I wanted the love, the drama, the all of it. So when you talk about the high quality questions that you can start to ask, what are some of those things? Like, how does someone try and get out of the drawer full of nasty tissues?
Well, like any addiction, okay, this is going to be probably something new that people are understanding, but you need a substitute to come in to replace that previous infatuation or addiction, you know what I mean? So those qualities in that person that we now miss, we need something else to latch onto. And this is the beauty of this process and the principles behind it, because I'm a trained scientist, I've got bachelor's degrees and master's degrees in various sciences, and I'm a career technical guy. And this process applies the conservation of energy principle, which is one of the most fundamental laws in physics. And when you apply it to your own life, nothing is missing. So basically, all those things that you think are missing from that person that you're pining over are actually already in your life. And from the moment of the loss, the breakup, new people pop into our life, new opportunities, new friends, old friends come back into our life. Our pets take on some of those attributes. Ourselves actually take on a lot of those things as well. And when you actually ask that question, go, okay, who has come into my life now and fulfilled that specific role? It could be, okay, I miss their touch. I miss cooking meals with them or something like that. There's a whole bunch of them. Usually I work with about 10 to 15 until the the client has exhausted all the things they miss in their partner.
Right.
But I have to get very specific on what that is. It's like a quality or a frequency, like a color. And each shade has a different energy component to it. And so you can actually break it down to those components and work one by one across. And when you do, by the end of it, and work with a whole summation of them, the pain's gone, one by one. Do you miss that now? No, because you've gone across, help them identify where they're already getting it. And then, like you said before, you actually highlight a negative aspect of that in your ex. That helps actually bring down the infatuation, brings down the grief. You go, oh, shit, it actually was pretty bad.
Right. Well, we
Okay.
do that. We have that. It's funny. Why? And I love that you're a science guy. And I want to put a pin in this question, ladies, because, so what about if you loved the sex with this person or the chemistry? So we'll talk about how you place that. But my question for you is when you're in that brain moment, right? The brain is sort of missing that piece. And we usually have a natural negative cognitive bias, except I feel like in relationships, we don't. It's like we forget all the crap and we only fantasize about the good parts. So why does the brain do
That's
that?
right.
Why does the brain normally go to the negative, but when it comes to breakups, we forget the negative?
Well, it's a good question, but our natural instinct is to move towards pleasure and away from pain. That's an instinctual survival mechanism. And when left by default, that's the natural process. So we have to actually break that, with our objective senses, our objective mind, to be able to be realistic and rational and go, no. In actuality, there's actually two equal and opposite components to everything, both positive and negative. There's actually two poles to everything in existence on every level, at every scale. So that's natural process, and left to our own devices, that survival mechanism kicks in. So when we're emotional, our instincts kick in. When we're actually rational and objective and can actually ask these questions, our intuition actually kicks in. we can actually sense it. Does that answer your question?
Well, no, it does, because I was just thinking that when you think about we're avoiding pain and seeking pleasure, so it makes sense. Like, we want to feel in control of our crappy emotions, and so we seek that thing that makes us feel nostalgic or makes us feel like maybe we could get it back, rather than that thing that we don't like about that person, which is really interesting, because that pain that we're in is so great, but yet we still move toward the positive or whatever that is. And do you find that people in these situations, like, is there any relation between like the more dysfunction in the relationship, that what people got from it, like the unhealthy parts of it that they miss? Like, is it the drama? Is it the attention? Like, how do you reconcile that? Because a lot of what I feel like people are missing is like the addicted to the drama, right? Or addicted to the chase, or addicted to something, rather than, oh, I loved, that he, was there to kiss me when I came home from work. I mean, how do people reconcile that?
Well, let me start by going back to your other question. Our natural process is to want pleasure, and that actually is going after those feel-good feelings, which is actually caused by, all the feel-good hormones, oxytocin, serotonin, and dopamine, all those things. And that is very addictive. That's what makes us want to go towards that. And with regards to your second question, sorry, I forgot it.
No, I was just sort of wondering why when we're in that space of missing somebody so very much, and we're trying to get away from pain, like, some of that missing is coming from a dysfunctional place, right? Like, it's we grew up and we always had to like prove ourselves to get love from a parent.
Oh, for sure.
Right. And so there's that thing that we're missing is coming from this dysfunctional, unhealthy place.
Oh, of course.
Right. So,
yeah.
So talk to me about that, because I think people, it's like, they're saying, oh, I miss the way he made me feel. Like, I'd come home from work and he was there and he held my hand, or, talked to me while I, prepared dinner or whatever it is. But is that what they're really missing? Or is that unconscious part of their brain really like missing the drama or the validation or the fight or the chase?
That's a really good point. I mean, I'll give you an example, with my life. When I was a kid, my mum left when I was about 7 or 8 years old, She left my dad, my brother, and me. And there was a volatile home environment, so it's not like I blame her at the moment or anymore. I've done a lot of work around that. And definitely my intimate relationships have reflected back to me to try and help me resolve all that. And they have. And I finally have gone a long way towards that. But one thing that I've always admired in women in my adult relationships has been the nurturing quality, that mothering quality, because I didn't have it for a good period of my childhood, if you can imagine, in my perception, I should say. So I was drawn to these women who had these qualities, and I thought that was a positive quality, to be nurturing, to be motherly, and a lot of them actually were mothers. And then when it got down to it and time went by, we realised all these so-called positive things that made these people attractive, when you're spending time with their kids, they would actually turn their back on you, and it would actually affect the relationship. You'd actually be the very thing that drew that person into my life, being a good mother, forced her to turn her back, face her child so she could actually be a good mother. And here I am being rejected and abandoned in a way in the relationship. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, totally makes sense.
So that's my dysfunction and skewed perceptions and conditioning through my upbringing brought me those experiences to keep those things happening, but I kept attracting them and I wanted them. And it's kind of crazy how it all works, but it's just perfect in its design. I'm fascinated by our minds and how they draw us in these experiences.
Well, yeah, and so that's I kind of want because you keep talking about like really looking at the deeper patterns and the deeper pieces, and so for those of you who are kind of like listening and taking that mental inventory of the men that you've been with or the partners you've been with and what are the patterns, I think it's just really important to realize, and you said it so beautifully, like these things are here to show you what it is, that you can heal,
Exactly.
right? If you look at it. Okay, so I have 3 things on my list I got to make sure we answer before we end. And
Okay.
I mean, I could talk to you for freaking ever. Okay. So first of all, let's talk about sex because you were like, you made it sound so easy. You're like, you replace the healthy things that you miss
Mm,
about this person. And I'm telling you, I hear this freaking all day long. Like, oh my God, the sex with so and so was so amazing. Or,
hmm
I tried dating, but the chemistry with my ex was like, I'll never find that again. So when that is something that you are telling yourself is something, that is so amazing and you're getting through this breakup and Michael said, go replace it. That does that mean like someone told me, the best way to get over someone is to get under someone else. And I was
Yeah.
like,
No.
doesn't work. So how do we handle that part of it, Michael?
Well, like I said, there's no such thing as anything missing. And sex is an interesting thing because it means so many different things to different people. It can mean pure physical pleasure for one person. It could mean connection for another. It could be usually it's a whole combination of these factors. So I need to go in there and go, okay, what does sex mean to you? And break it down. Does it mean pleasure? Okay, physical pleasure. Put that aside. That's a component. That's a component we now work with on by itself. Then I go through, okay, what else? I feel connected, a feeling of connection with someone else. Okay, connection with someone else. Okay, great. Where are you now getting that? And it's not going to necessarily in a sexual way now in their life that the partner's missing, but it's come up in another way. It could be a sense of belonging, feeling wanted. And I break all these things down into the components and work each one individually because in some cases there might be great sex. You might pop up and get a fling or a one, like
Right. Yeah,
a
totally.
rebound straight away, but most of the case it's not. And a lot of the time it can be virtual. Like in my case, it's going to sound weird, but when I worked through this process of myself, I just thought all the women that have come up in my life and all the potential women and the ones that I know that are now accessible came in and gave me this overwhelming feeling of there was a high sexual charge there. And I went, whoa, okay, am I missing sex now? No, I feel it. I've just felt it come. And this is a bit of a virtual component that my mind created at that moment. But when I looked at my life and broke it all down, I found it in all the other areas, you
Mm,
know.
yeah.
Other people came into my life to fulfill that. I got closer to other friends. Um,
So that
yeah, animals
story,
and pets come in. Pets might be more affectionate
yeah,
somehow. It
they
works.
do. They always just might love my cat. Um, so and I think too, like, and I'm curious what you think about this too. Is I think that when you're in the breakup process, there's a lot of stories that you tell yourself, right, about it to justify. And so what I hear you saying is, and I think I want to underscore this, get out the yellow highlighter. That like it's not necessarily the sex, right? Like Michael said, you're breaking down what are the components of it, because I think sometimes that's just a justification to keep the ideal of that X on the pedestal, which is a whole other sort of, I'm sure we could talk about that for days too. But I want to ask you this. Um, uh, Social media stalking. What are your tips
Okay.
around? Yeah, what are your tips around breakups and being? Cause I'll be like, oh, we're friends. We decided to be friends, or there's should I block them? Or we're still friends on Instagram. Like, what do you think is the best way to handle the being friends topic, and then also like the social media stalking or lack thereof?
Well, what I'd go in there and help that person break the infatuation with their partner or their ex.
Yeah.
when you get down to it and actually see how all those positive things that they see in them, they're actually not that great, and they're actually harming your life. By the end of it, that person, I wouldn't say disgusted, but they're actually, put it this way, not attracted. And it's not only that, it's when you get down to it and dissolve these emotional charges within us. For example, dissolve the infatuation, you're no longer pining for this person. Life then has a way of remodeling itself around a new vibration. You just naturally go out. Natural behavior is not to even want to stalk or want to know what that person's doing, maybe out of just courtesy or even just as a friend, but it's very level-headed. It's not in a imbalanced emotional way, or pining way.
Angsty.
Sorry?
Angsty, when you're just like, you're just
angsty,
like,
yes,
yeah, angsty.
yes.
You're like,
nice word.
Yeah, let me, it's probably so American, angsty.
I'll add that to my vocabulary.
Okay, that's so good. I think the word infatuation, I think that requires taking a lot of personal responsibility and say, like, am I infatuated? I get triggered by that word because when I was 14 and I had a boyfriend that was so bad for me, my mom was like, you're just infatuated. But she was sort of right.
Well, it's just a word to explain that basically you're seeing more positives than negatives about the person.
Yeah.
That's basically it. And that's not the truth. The truth is there's actually equally both, but we're blind to one side because it serves its purpose for some reason, based on our past conditioning. It could be our values. It could be whatever.
Yeah, so many things. So, okay. So, and I really think this is an important thing that you said, because I have pointed this out to people. So I think it's worth saying here, and I'd love your opinion on it. Like when someone will say like, oh, they're just my friend, right? And they'll say, like, hey, let's see, Jackie's brother, Jeff. Hey, Jeff. I'm finally in a place where, I'm getting better about our breakup, and it's not really helpful, when you text me or, whatever. They'll set a boundary, right? And then like 2 weeks later, Jeff gets angsty because he actually he likes the positives, right? And so he's like texting Jane, and he's saying, oh, I'm just thinking about you. Hope you're doing okay. And I'm kind of trying to like tell people that, and you said this, like, the less than delicious attributes of that person. I was sort of like, well, number one, they're not respecting your boundary. Number two, they probably want something, right? They're just wanting, do they really care about you, or do they need validation or attention? Are they actually manipulating you? And then I would say, like, would any of your friends ever do that to you? So I think there can just be a whole lot of justification when we don't, like you said, unplug those charges and keep forcing our brain to be in that rational adult, prefrontal cortex kind of place.
Yeah. No, so when someone wants to reach out in a needy way, it means they feel like they're missing something.
Yeah.
So, but at the same time, they're entangled with the object of their infatuation. They're actually, that's a two-way street. But so you can work with either person. I can actually work with the guy who wants to text his ex and say, well, you know what? Let's break down these pinings. Let's break down these things that you're missing. Let's find the underlying truth behind it and dissolve that. And what it'll do, it'll just dissolve the behaviors. They won't want to reach out.
I love
it. Just won't.
You know what you are, Michael? You're like the antidote to the psycho ex-girlfriend or the psycho ex-boyfriend. You're like, they need Michael to help them like unwind and unpack so that obsessive, that because that's what it is. We really get like crazy. I say psycho ex-girlfriend because someone interviewed me once about my story, and I was describing my behaviors of being the psycho ex-girlfriend. I didn't say that, but then he titled the episode of the podcast like my psycho ex-girlfriend, and I was like, yeah, I guess that was it. I guess I am a card-carrying member of the Recovering Psycho Ex-Girlfriend Club. Okay, here's my last question for you. Um,
Okay.
so look, if someone is suffering right now, either they they need to break up,
Hmm.
or they're in a breakup, or they've come out, it's been like 3 weeks and now it's like almost
Hmm.
worse. What are a couple of tips that you can give those ladies just to continue to be in the process and get through it?
Okay. So for heartbreak, and if it's been recent, it doesn't have to be recent. People can take years to get
Yeah.
over someone, you know. So
Yep.
time isn't really relevant. But if there's emotions are there present, then basically what I'd do, I'd list down all the things that you miss and get very specific with each thing. You know, it could be cuddles in bed. It could be um, coming home from work and discussing our day. It could be having intelligent conversations over coffee in the morning, sex. But like I said, we can break that down into feeling like belonging, I should say,
Yep.
and things like this. So make a list until you feel like, okay, that's about it. Then go through and identify in your life now where other people have come in and fulfilling that role, because there's a conservation going on of energy. And when you identify all these different people, and it's got to be quantitatively balanced, you've got to go, okay, do I feel that these people now have come into my life since the breakup, fulfilling that role as much as my ex did? No. Okay, keep going. Who else? Maybe yourself, but keep going until it's balanced quantitatively. Then go through that same attribute that you've got on your list. So I'm working way across now. Go to your ex and dig up memories of them expressing that attribute, times when you observe that in them, and identify how it actually was a disadvantage to your life, how it harmed your life, how it actually challenged what's important to you, and get the answers are there waiting to be found. You know them, they're in our subconscious. It just needs some persistence and some questioning to get through that barrier, you know,
I love this. I love your scientific approach because you're so you make it sound so like it's granular, right? Like there
analytical, mercantile. It's yeah.
I love it though. I think it's so great because that's kind of like what you're saying is the antidote, right? Like that we have to because we have to ask these deeper questions. We have to get granular. We have to get into the weeds of it. We have to go really to the underbelly of it because what it appears to be when the amygdala is running the show is
Yeah.
not the truth, right? And
Yeah.
so it takes that like because I think a lot of our listeners like they had a problem at work, right? Or an employee or somebody that they were working with or some sort of professional situation. Um, you know, they're going to think about it a lot more analytically or quantitatively versus, just like, oh, but like, that emotional pain piece. So we all have the capability, right? You don't have to be magical to be able to access the ability to ask these kinds of questions.
No, it just takes a little bit of perseverance, and it's important to get accurate as well, And I'll just finish that. There's one more step to go,
Let's go.
and
Let's
that's
do it. We got to get the whole
okay. So
plan.
once you see that actually that attribute in your ex is actually bad to your life just as much as it was good, so it's balanced there. Then identify how it's fulfilling your values, what's important to you in your life, in those people now. Because life has a way of actually revolving itself around what our values display, what our values are. And our values change over time. And so what happens when we break up or go through a breakup is that our values are changing. Therefore, life's remodeling itself around these new values because that partnership was not serving you anymore on your deeper core level on what's important to you. And the summation of all what's important to you, your values, is your purpose, what you're doing here. And when things conflict with that, whether we consciously do it or not, we could be between our higher self, our conscious mind, our subconscious is working together to get you to fulfill those things that are most important to you in your life in the most efficient way. And a lot of people, to get their values fulfilled, is as a single person, despite what their conscious mind says, no, I want that guy, I want that partner. Well, actually, I had another thing here. This might help single people who are perpetually single and dating and can't find decent guy. It's actually because it's not that they don't value relationships. It's that usually there's pain associated with being in relationships that they're not acknowledging, hasn't been accepted and woken up. So it's like there's unconscious motives to stay single for these people. And they're wondering, why can't I meet a decent guy? It's because there's unresolved baggage there. It could be usually it's with past partners, because our past partners reflect everything. Even issues that we've got with our parents. We don't have to go all the way back to regress with hypnotherapy and to our childhood. We can, and it actually is very efficient to do that, because that's where the original kernel or the original charge is. But our intimate partners actually go a long way to reflect that and trigger us.
Yes.
To help us wake up to that as feedback, So we have all the answers at our disposal. We just need to know how to work it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, you said like a million amazing things in there. But I think that is so true, is that we are getting a mirror of what it is that is holding us back. And I did a Facebook post in our Dating Den podcast group. And I think there were like 60 or 70 comments. It's the biggest thing we ever posted. And the question was, what scares the crap out of you about being in a relationship? And that was, people were like, blah, 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 right? Like, and it was all, and those are the same people that, are struggling to find a partner. And it's like, well, what Michael said, right? Those are the dominating beliefs, right, that are actually holding you back at a conscious or unconscious level from finding the great guy, because that is like you're talking about polarity, right? Like that magnet is pulling you so far away from what it is that you really want, that will or desire isn't enough to overcome it, right?
Exactly. Let's say you said like a magnet. I like to think of us manifesting in our ideal partner. We've got a good idea of what that is in our mind. And that's like an electric charge. It's not very strong, but it's an intention, because we're pretty clear of what we don't want. So from our past relationships. And so we're pretty clear on what we want. And we've got that as a blueprint. Now, to actually have that brought into our life, we have to dissolve the past hurts, the past resentments, the angers with our past partners. And what that does, that releases the trapped emotional energy that's blocking our heart. And that's the magnetic force that actually manifests that person into your life. So once you can dissolve those threads and drop those shields, the energy that's in your field, it's in your physiology, in your magnetic field, has to go somewhere. Like I said, there's conservation going on of energy. It goes out to create your next intention. It happens quick. The more detailed you are on your blueprint and what you want, I think one of your podcast guests recently actually mentioned about being very clear and design your ideal relationship. I think that's so important. Mm-hmm. Do it. And then work to cut all those emotional threads with your past any way you can. There's a lot of help out there,
Yeah, no, we totally see that, right? I think I want to underscore that. Like, when you have clarity of what you want and you do the work to unpattern what it is that you're afraid of, then it's like, I don't know what the science is on that, but it's like, then you're having all your energy moving forward toward one thing. It's instead of the, pushing on the gas and like pumping the brakes at the same time.
Exactly. Yeah, it's powerful. It's not easy, but it's the way I like to work is not force things from the outside, but just to work with the inner state, and then watch what happens. Life just revolves and changes to fit that new paradigm. And all of a sudden, boom, you're very surprised about what happens, what can happen. I was.
Me too. That's why I always say it's beyond your wildest dreams, right? Because when you were with Jackie, your dream of what relationship could be was only X, right? Like it had a limit based on your experience. And once you shifted all that energy and you had all of your life force directed toward what you want and that new identity, right? Then it's like whoosh, and you're like, holy crap, Now
Yep.
I'm like, I'm beyond what I could have imagined.
Yeah, and it keeps going. That's not the end either.
No, we hope not. Oh, yes, hope not, for sure. Michael, I loved having you on this show. You're amazing. I love
It's been great.
I love science guys. I love your accent. I really hope that someday soon Australia lets Americans back in. My whole family lives in Sydney, so I would like to see them. I'd love to meet you one day. And I'm just so grateful that you shared all of your brilliance here. So thank you for being here.
No, thanks for having me. And I'll just make a note that I'm also wishing Australia would let me back in because I'm actually in South Africa.
No way. Wait, what?
Yeah.
You're trapped?
I moved here 10 years ago to be with Jackie.
Oh.
And then when that finished, I decided to stay on. I loved it here. I went, no, this place has got it.
Oh my God. Well,
right.
you could have a hybrid of the hottest accents on the planet, South Africa and Australia. But he's taken, ladies. Don't be stalking him on Instagram, Michael. He's taken. It was great to meet you. Ladies, whatever you do, you know what I'm going to say. Do it with some damn dignity. We'll see you on the show next time. Bye. Hey, thanks for tuning into today's show. So if being in an intimate relationship in which you feel 100% seen, heard, and accepted by a high caliber man is a priority for you right now, and you're interested in seeing if you're a fit for working with me and my team at Dating with Dignity, here's what I want you to do. Just head over to DWD VIP, that's D as in dating, W, D as in dating, VIP.com, and book a call to speak with my team. We'll get on the phone with you for about 60 minutes and you'll get crystal clear on what's stopping you from finding true love right now. We'll also take a look at what you want to create, what you want your whole life to look like when you're able to finally be fully expressed as a woman in a healthy relationship with an incredible guy. And if we can help you get from where you are right now to where you want to be, we will show you the fastest path possible that makes sense for you to do that. We help smart, successful women all over the world solve this one missing piece in their life so they can finally have it all. So to see if we can help you do the same thing, head over to DWDVIP.com. I'm Marni Batista, and let's talk soon.